All right, my friends. So to start off with, I want you to look at these three figures, take a minute, pause the video, and write down how they are the same, what do they have in common, and then how are they different. So pause and write. Okay, now what you might have come up with, maybe you just talked about the fact that this is a line, a square, and a box. Maybe you said they all have black lines on them. Maybe you thought about how many dimensions they are in. It's like this we would say is one dimension, okay, just one. This is two-dimensional, so it's flat, has length and width. And then this is in 3D, length, width, and height. So something that I can actually hold in my hands, 3D, okay? What you might not have thought about is how we would measure each figure, okay? We can talk about different ways to describe them, to measure them. So write this down with me on your sheet. So we could measure the line. We could measure it in length, sorry. Pen's being a little weird. We could measure the length of it. How long? What is the distance? Okay, whether it's an actual line on a paper or from here to there, it's just one-dimensional. And to do that, we use length units. Okay, so write that down. That could be inches. It could be centimeters. It could be feet. It could be miles. Many different units that we use, but they're all units of length. To measure this 2D square in the middle, we would measure the area. You might remember this. It's the space that it covers. So say I have these pennants on the wall. How much space on the wall are they covering? Talk about carpet on the floor. How much does it cover? Okay. Now the units we use are called square units. So it could be square inches, it could be square feet, square meters, square kilometers. Because I want to know how many little squares does it take to cover this bigger square or rectangle or whatever shape. Measure the area of it. Now this unit, we're going to be talking about measuring the volume of 3D shapes. We'll write the definition in a second, but it's essentially the space occupied by a 3D shape, or how much stuff could I fit inside and fill it all the way up with. And we do this in cubic units. So it's actually how many little cubes. If you think about a Rubik's Cube, is made up of these little cubes. How many cubes would it take to build it or to fill it all the way up? That's the volume. So make sure you write those things down. If you need to pause it, go ahead. Like I said, the definition is the space occupied by a three-dimensional figure. Like I showed, here's sort of a picture. I showed you the Rubik's Cube, or here's a visual that you have on your notes. Each of these little cubes is called a unit cube because it doesn't tell us it's in inches, so we just call it a unit. Could be a square or a cubic centimeter or a cubic inch, or we can just call it a unit cube. So how many cubes does it take to fit in? That's what we call volume. Now, go ahead, turn your page and think about which of these figures has volume. Go ahead, circle what you think. Hopefully you circled those two, the two rectangular prisms. These are just two-dimensional, so we could measure the area, but not the volume of those two figures. And now we can think about whether we'd measure the length, area, or volume of some different things. So the first is the amount of soil or dirt needed to fill a flower pot. Go ahead and write what you think. All right, so imagine like, ooh, it's a flower pot. How much dirt can I fit inside of there? That's the volume. Then we can think about the units we'd use. We'd use cubic units. Maybe it's cubic inches, or inches cubed is another way to say that. The distance of a bike ride is length, and we'd measure that in length units of some sort. The amount of wall space covered by a poster, that would be area. Like we wrote, we'd use square units. All right, I'm not going to keep writing the units because they're just going to be the same. Volume always uses cubic, area always uses square, and length always uses length. The amount of concrete needed to fill a patio. A patio is like what you might sit on outside a house or a restaurant. It has length, width, and a height to it. It has a depth to it. So how much concrete would I need? I measure that in volume. I measure the volume of that. How about the space inside of a moving truck? So length, width, also has height. How much space is inside? Volume. The distance around a building. Length. Again, in length units. Now, if there's an ocean engineer who needs to tile the walls of an oceanarium or an aquarium, does he need to find the area of the walls or the volume? So I have a wall covering it in tiles. That's area. So I have how many square feet of tiles? He also needs to fill the tank with seawater. Does he need to find the area or the volume? If we're filling up a space, that is volume. Now the last thing I want you to write down is, how would you explain volume to a friend? Jot a couple thoughts down. If you were going to put it in your own words, don't just copy the definition. Write, like, what would you tell someone, or to your little brother or sister or your neighbor or somebody? How would you explain to them what volume is? Let me know if you have questions, and good luck.